If you remember, the last thing we started was the size of the business organizations. And I told you that there are different methods to measure the size of the businesses. The first method of measuring the size of business is the number of employees. That is the very common method that is used for measuring the size of business, but mostly used in those sectors where number of employees are the major part of the business. I mean to say that the business is labor intensive, not capital intensive. When we say business is labor intensive, it does mean that business is using more labor as compared to the capital in the industry. So for those industries where there is more labor and less capital, the number of employees method can be used. And if business has a higher number of employees, business will be considered large. If business has lower number of employees, business will be considered small. But there is a problem with this method. This method cannot be applied to the labor capital intensive industries. For example, there is a highly automated system in the manufacturing concern that use more innovative and IT techniques and larger plant and machineries. This method won't be applied there. Cannot be applied on highly capital intensive production units. The second method we use to measure the size of business is called revenue. We used to call it sales revenue originally, but now new accounting terminologies, that is called revenue only. What is revenue? Revenue is the total sales of business. Revenue is the total sales of business. What does it mean? How we calculate the total revenue? Total revenue is calculated by multiplying the number of units sold with their selling price. Quantity sold multiplied by the selling price. For example, you are an iPhone seller and you sell 2,000 iPhones in a day, and the selling price of one iPhone is $1,000. How much total revenue you have earned?
2,000 times 1,000.
It's 2 million.
2 million.
So this is how revenue is calculated. Revenue is used especially calculating, measuring the size of business when they are operating in the same industry. Usually used for those businesses operating in similar industry. I mean, it will be very good way to measure the size of business when we are comparing the size of Audi and BMW or Mercedes, for example, because they are operating in the similar industry. But it will be difficult to measure the size and compare the size of business in different industries. For example, it won't be possible to measure the size of a chocolate seller in comparison with the Audi or a BMW. The third method that we use is capital employed. What is capital employed? Capital employed is basically total investment into the business, the long-term investment by the shareholders and other sources, total value of all long-term finances. invested into the business. When we talk about the capital employed is a very good way to measure the size of those businesses who are capital intensive, who use more machinery for their production processes. But again, it will be very misleading when it comes to those firms who use more labor and labor intensive firms, because for those the capital amount might be less, but it does not mean their size is small. So you cannot compare, for example, a school, college, or a university with a steel mill. The capital employed method can be used for a steel mill, but not cannot be used for a school, college, or university. The labor intensive method might be more useful for them. Then comes to the fourth method, market capitalization. What is this market capitalization? Market capitalization is the total value of the issued shares of company. Uh, if you remember, we have already discussed that the shares are the ownership rights to a person, and the private and the public limited companies can sell their shares into the can sell their shares. Private limited companies to the friends and family, and public limited companies to their shareholders in the stock exchange. So, what is the value of that shares in the market? That is called market capitalization, and market capitalization can be calculated by a formula, that is current share price multiplied by total number of shares, multiplied by total number of shares. So it gives the market capitalization of the firms. You might have noted that there are always rumors in the market. The company has exceeded $1 trillion of its capital. The company has exceeded uh, uh, $50 million of its assets and shares and all that. This is basically the term that is being used for the market capitalization. Because the number of shares value is always increasing or decreasing in the market. Sometimes you are becoming more profitable, your goodwill is increasing, your value in the market is increasing, your shareholders are becoming more happy with you in the market. As a result of that, they are demanding more of your shares in the market. It will all result in the increase in the price of the shares of the company. If the share price of the company will increase, its market capitalization will increase. So market capitalization is the total worth of the company in the terms of shares invested into the company. And if the market capitalization of company is high, it will be considered as a larger business. For example, comparing iPhone and Samsung, will always see the market capitalization of iPhone is higher as compared to the Samsung in the market, because their shares are being sold at higher prices in the market. That will lead towards a higher market capitalization. A higher goodwill in the market will lead to the higher market capitalization. More investment into the business by the more shareholders will lead to the higher market capitalization. And finally, it comes to the market share. What is market share? Market share is the percentage sales of one business in comparison with the whole industry. Percentage sales of one business in comparison with the whole industry. And it can be calculated by the formula total sales of the business divided by total sales of industry. divided by total sales of industry multiplied by 100. So when we say that Coca-Cola has a market share of 48%, for example, it would mean that whatever soft drinks are being sold in the industry daily, 48% of those are being sold by the Coca-Cola. This gives them a larger market share as compared to Pepsi. For example, I'm saying Pepsi is operating at 32%. So Coca-Cola will be considered a larger business as compared to Pepsi because Coca-Cola will have a larger market share and Pepsi will have a smaller market share. When we say Samsung has 32% market share and iPhone has 27% market share. So as a result of that, we'll say relatively Samsung is a larger brand as compared to iPhone because the market share of Samsung is higher in comparison with the iPhone. So these are few methods that can be used measuring the size of business. We need to remember that profit is not a way to measure the size of business. So we do not use profit for measuring the size of the business. Now, when it comes to the question which size of measure is the best way, so there is no universal method. There is no universal method. As I told you earlier, that it depends on the size of industry. It depends on the type of industry. It depends on the production techniques, labor intensive or capital intensive. It depends on the type of the product that company is offering. It depends on the price of the product. I told you earlier that you cannot compare the manufacturing of Audi when it comes to size and the manufacturing of chocolates because they are very different kind of products and their selling price is very different. The number of units, the chocolate seller will be selling more than 1 million unit and it will not be able to compare the sales revenue of Audi when they have sold only a single unit. So the type of it depends on the different perspectives that I have discussed with you, that there is no one universal and absolute method measuring the size of the business. We always use when it comes to the measure of size of business at least two methods, and on the basis of that we decide that which business is considered small or which business is considered large.